Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Global Vegfest. I'm Dr. Leila Dehqan. I'm the education lead and a board member of the Plant-Based Health Professionals UK. The Plant-Based Health Professionals UK is a community interest company, and we promote and provide education on whole food plant-based nutrition. I'm really grateful to the Global Vegfest team for giving us the platform to host 2 panel discussions today. And the theme is Vegan for Life. How can we stay healthy and vegan for life? You know, when we listen to ex-vegans and some of the media headlines, one might actually think that, staying vegan for life is not possible. So the first panel discussion is hosted by Rohini Bajekal, the communication lead and the board member of Plant-Based Health Professionals UK. And this panel will focus on real-life stories of vegans who are in excellent health. And should you have any questions about diet and health, make sure to comment in the, to post in the comments, and I will bring them up in the second panel discussion, where an expert team of doctors, dietitians, and nutritionists will discuss on bust myths around the vegan diet. Now, without further ado, please welcome Rohini and the panelists.
Thank you, Leila. That was a lovely introduction. I am so excited for this morning, and I want to say a huge thank you to everyone joining us from around the world. It's really exciting to be here and to be on this panel of an incredible lineup of healthy vegans. So I first want to introduce myself again. My name is Rohini, and if you've got any questions throughout or comments, then please do share them. We want to make this as engaging as possible. We have got a great lineup today. We're going to be talking about the unique real-life stories of 4 incredible vegans who we have today. So we first have Tim Barford, who you all know as the founder of VegFest UK. We have Annie Leymaries, who's an activist and quite prolific on Twitter. Annette Henry, who's a health coach and founder of Henry & Henry. And we have Nishma Shah, who's a legendary vegan chef from Shamboos. And they're all members of Plant-Based Health Professionals UK as well, which is an organization dedicated to promoting the health benefits of a sustainable and healthy vegan diet. So without further ado, I'd like to ask Nishma to kick things off. Nishma, would you be able to tell us how long it took for you to make the transition to a fully vegan diet? And just a little bit about your journey right at the start. Nishma, you're muted.
Thank you, Rohini, for the lovely introduction, and it's lovely to see Tim here as well. So, like Rohini mentioned, I am the member of a plant-based health professions, but my journey started with the catering journey. Started with Tim Barford at his VegFest UK, all the way back in 2005. And my personal vegan journey, that started, it took me about a year to go vegan because I didn't understand the concept of veganism. And to be honest, to be a vegan is a journey, and once you do your research and you understand, you find that it's very, very easy to go vegan. Sorry, am I answering your question? I didn't really understand. How long did it?
No, absolutely. You really made that decision almost overnight. And for you, I think you're kind of saying that once you made that connection, that that made it a lot easier once you understood the reason. And it's been many years for you, hasn't it, Nishma? I think over 20 years.
It has been over 20 years now. And also, like, I was really lucky in a way that my family, we were vegetarians, and I come from a Jain family, so we didn't have any leather products. I was a lacto-vegetarian without any eggs or cheese, and paneer as well was hardly ever used. So for me to make the transition to be vegan was very, very easy, but it was just understanding that milk wasn't produced by cows regularly. They were forced to become pregnant. And when you understand where your food comes from and the cruelty involved, then I think that the switch to be vegan was very easy for me.
That's wonderful to hear. I think making that connection and knowing your why is so key for anything that you want to do in the long term and you want to be able to sustain. So I'd like to ask Annette, who had quite a different journey, and would you be able to share a bit about how long it took you to make that transition to a fully plant-based diet, Annette?
Yes, I can. It's two answers, really. The one is about 2 decades, and the other is no time at all, because I was never intending to be vegan. It was never part of a plan. I stopped having dairy about 2 decades ago for my health, which did make a significant difference. And gradually I was letting go of things and becoming more conscious about my food, and became fully plant-based, and eventually realized I'm probably actually vegan. And now I am vegan and call myself vegan. So it really was it was a slow burn, but it was also very quick in the end, because veganism has come quite late to me, really, simply because it's a realization. Once you see these things, once you understand, I don't think you can go back. You can't unsee the things that you've noticed. And this then, it applies clearly for health. This was my big push in the first place, but then also for the planet and for animals. They're all just as important, and that makes it exciting. You realize when you're doing right by one of those, that you're doing right in 3 ways, and it makes it really compelling, I think.
Beautifully said. And I love that you now use your platform and your mission to help other people make these connections as well. Speaking of which, I'd love to go to Tim, who I know started very early with your vegan journey. Would you be able to tell us a little how you made that transition initially, and how you made that connection? You're muted, Tim. Everyone, just remember to unmute. We're all trying to mute ourselves when everyone else is.
Thanks for that reminder. And I was 17, living with my mum and dad still. I was lucky to have a sort of staple family home, and 3 meals a day, most of which was animal product, quite animal product heavy. I suppose what you call a more Mediterranean diet, though, especially as we lived in the Mediterranean for part of my childhood. By 1980, mainly as an act of political rebellion, I went what we now call pretty much plant-based. In those days, it's sort of called vaguely vegetarian, but it was rather vague. But what we now call pretty much plant-based, which is a pretty much based diet on plants, but not strictly so. But in 1984, I did go vegan. I met some animal rights protesters and such like in 1984, and again, it was very much a sort of political thing to oppose, the whole picture, the commodification of animals, the misuse, the land use of developing countries, the environmental impacts, but particularly that land use, because this is at the time of Live Aid, and Ethiopia was just coming into a sort of script of like these horrendous famines. But also the knowledge that we were importing cattle fodder from Ethiopia all the way through that famine. That was the original motivation. So I've been lucky. I've been on a pretty much whole food plant-based diet now for my entire adult life.
Amazing.
Very happy that's been. Consider myself blessed. I never saw that as something I went without. I always saw it as a real benefit to be plant-based and then vegan.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tim. And now lastly, Annie, would you be able to share a little bit about yourself? You've also had a fascinating journey.
Okay, thank you. So I come from a French family where meat was definitely essential. On my father's side, they're all livestock farmers and charcutiers, they make ham and pâtés. But I came to England as a student in the late 1960s and 70s and met, I was a bit of a hippie then, and met some bunch of vegetarians, fell in love with one, whom I end up marrying later. So I kind of, a bit by fluke, became vegetarian because nice people were vegetarians around me. And stayed vegetarian for a number of years, but then I left my husband, met another man, became flexitarian, I guess, for quite a while, until I was working in Ethiopia in the 1980s. And like Tim, I became vegan in 1984. Again, the influence of two colleagues who were passionate. Well, one of them had been vegan already for a long time, and the other one got convinced, like I did, by his explanations, a bit like Tim, by the environment, the politics, the whole reasons that are so much more valid now that we know about climate change, but that were already valid then. And I was then working for the International Livestock Center for Africa, where we were pushing for meat and dairy in my job in a way, but it became very convincing to me that we were in a way doing the wrong thing, especially for richer countries. It was easy because Ethiopia is a country where veganism is very deeply ingrained in the culture. A large portion of the population eats a vegan diet for at least half of the year. And I much prefer the vegan dishes to the meat ones. So it was actually made easy by the culture I was in at the time. And then I remained vegan when I went to work to Kenya, where again, the popular dishes are in a way plant-based. And then I went to work in India, where again, long tradition of vegetarianism. So, being vegan wasn't a big push, far from it. And carried on. So I've been on a whole food plant-based diet like Tim for something like 37, coming up to 38 years now.
It's just
and it became
I love that you all touched on, really how everyone's story is so unique and no one's journey is perfectly linear. There's ups and downs, and certainly drawing from traditions and cultures that have prioritized plant-based food for even thousands of years in some cases is quite incredible. So I'm going to do a quick fire round and ask everyone, what is your favorite healthy and tasty plant-based meal? Your favorite tasty and healthy plant-based meal. So first I'd like to go to Nishma. What is your favorite tasty and healthy plant-based meal? You just get one. You remember to unmute yourself.
Yeah, so my healthy and plant-based is pav bhaji, which is like a street food, and it's a melody of all different vegetables eaten on the bread. So I would say it's like a vegan version of sloppy joes, but just with loads of spices on it.
Amazing. I love that. And when you make it at home, it is so much healthier as well. I do it and I try and use the whole wheat bread and things for that, but it's such a good comfort meal. How about
it's zero waste as well, isn't it?
Absolutely, and you can use whatever's left in the fridge. Such a great meal. How about you, Annette, next?
For me, I think it has to be the super simple breakfast that we have, which is typically a huge bowl of sunshine. So fruit, chopped up fruit, all sorts of different fruits, followed by oats in some form or other. We have quite big breakfasts, but we eat quite simply, and it's really lovely to really enjoy natural food and fruit in particular, because that wasn't really part of my past. I didn't eat much fruit. I fell into that idea that sugar is sugar in any form. So now I love fruit. That's it. It's that simple for me.
I love that. Sometimes the simple meals are the best and the most comforting. You don't need to be a gourmet chef to have a really tasty and varied plant-based diet. How about you, Annie? What is your favorite go-to healthy and tasty plant-based meal?
It's so hard to choose. I love dal bhat, I love lentils, but I'll go for, again, a simple one. I just go for a really mixed salad. You don't need to cook. You can just put so many plant foods you can eat raw, and you can make such a lovely mixture with seeds and nuts and all kind of veg. And you can add some beans if you want, and you can change the dressing every day, tahini, all kind of things. So again, simple mixed salad with lots of colors.
Love that. It's such a great way to get in all those incredible phytonutrients and really eat a variety. That diversity of plants is so easy to achieve with a salad. How about you, Tim? What's your absolute go-to?
That's great. All of those things that has been mentioned, especially the big bowls of fruit, which again, I love eating lots and lots of fruit and lots of salads and lots of greens. But my favourite, really, my go-to is blueberries and de-hulled hemp seed. I would say blueberries are daily now. I eat blueberries daily, and I really they're the superfood of all the fruits. If you had to put me on that mysterious desert island that no vegan has ever found themselves on, but if I did, it would be a blueberry, a desert island that was covered in blueberries and dehydrated hemp seeds. And hemp seed actually made a huge difference to me. I started eating dehydrated hemp seed about 20 years ago, and I'd say that was a big step. That was an essential step forward in a whole food plant-based diet, which I believe is, in optimum is different from a whole food plant-based diet. There's an optimum. There's certain features such as blueberries and dehydrated hemp seeds that can take you into optimum range. But essentially, all of those things you've mentioned, the rainbow whole food plant-based diet is the go-to. Take your pick.
All sounds so delicious. So I would love to know, what do you think, in your opinion, is the biggest health misconception about plant-based diets? And, it could be something that you perhaps thought yourself before you went on this journey, and something that you want to combat. I know there are hundreds out there. It's hard to choose just one, but what would you say is the one for you that really sticks? And I would like to go to Annette for that. What is that biggest health misconception? You work with hundreds of people trying to switch to a healthy plant-based diet. What is the misconception that you find comes up?
I think it's that it's going to be boring and not satisfying, because there is a perception that you are going to be eating what's left on the plate. So the idea of meat and 3 veg, or 2 veg even, you will be left then with the 2 veg. The meat's gone, and all you're going to be left with is what remains, and that very often is a bit of an adornment to the meat anyway. The meat plays the central role, and people don't have the mindset that understands that a whole food vegan meal is something altogether different, and really a whole different direction. So you're eating something completely different from the leftovers of what happens when the meat is taken away. So it's that, really. I think people think it's going to be in all sorts of ways unsatisfying in terms of how they feel afterwards, still hungry in other words, and that they're going to be bored, and it's just not the case at all.
Couldn't agree more. And certainly, with a whole food plant-based diet, there is such a variety. I think there's tens of thousands of edible plants, and we barely scratch the surface many in what we see in the industrialized food systems. So you certainly open your mind up. I know that my palate has certainly changed from going whole food plant-based. So Nishma, what about for you? What would you say is that biggest health misconception that you have experienced from either from people around you or that you held yourself?
So the most common thing is a healthy food doesn't taste nice, or you'll be left very hungry really quickly. Plant-based food doesn't fill you up, or there is very limited food that you can eat that's plant-based. So it's like, all those different misconceptions that are out there. And the biggest one is like, it's not going to fill you up. That, like, people somehow feel they'll be left hungry just by eating plants, and that, which is not true at all. In fact, you feel more hungry after eating a pizza rather than eating, say, a banana.
I know. I think we so need the work of people like you, Nishma, who are chefs, who know exactly how to get all those incredible flavors and textures out of plant foods and really satisfy people. There's no shortage of that on a plant-based diet, but certainly we do need like great chefs and people who are showing us how to make the most of these ingredients, because for a lot of people it's such new, uncharted territory when they step into a plant-based diet. They're not entirely sure where to begin, but certainly using all those herbs and spices that you use in your cooking is going to get the most out of the plant foods for sure.
And also, it's expensive. That's what they think. The plant-based food is really expensive. Whereas if you look at all the cultures around the world, the basic like lentils, rice, grains, wheat, it's not expensive. Those are not expensive ingredients. So that always comes up that it's expensive.
Yeah, there's so many misconceptions out there. It's great that we're covering them. Annie, how about yourself? When you went towards a plant-based diet 37 years ago, what was that biggest health misconception you had?
I think I'll go with the protein issue. So many people are convinced that, first of all, you need lots and lots of protein, and secondly, they only come from animals. So there's still actually ongoing conversation about how much protein do we need, even among vegan nutritionists. But basically, the mainstream idea is that proteins only come from steaks and eggs and cheese. That plants can't possibly have complete proteins. So that's the misconception I think I'd love to fight.
I love that you touched on that. I don't think it's possible to have a discussion about vegan diets without discussing the protein myth. It's just absolutely pervasive and, absolutely entrenched in the mind of so many people and in institutions. So it's great to tackle that. And as mentioned, having a variety of whole plant foods is really important, with attention to things like legumes, in particular beans and lentils. I'm sure all of us eat those very regularly. Tim, how about you? You've worked with so many people with, I'm sure, faced a lot of had a lot of misconceptions about vegan diets. What's that one that sticks for you?
Do you know what? I find this is constantly moving on, and if you'd asked me 2 years ago, you'd have got very different answers. But I experienced an illness for the first time in my life about 15, 16 months ago, which was actually stress and trauma related, which I've recovered from, but it did throw up some nutrient issues. As a result of that, I've been supplementing. So I would say certainly the idea that supplementing your plant-based whole food diet is wrong, is a misconception. Don't be shy of your supplements. They're really, really useful, essential for optimum health. So essential fatty acids, EPA, DHA from algae, D3, vitamin D3, B12 in several different forms, perhaps spray, ingested, under the tongue, so that you make sure you get a really good absorption. So definitely don't be shy to get, good supplementation. And that can be cheap. There can be very cheap sources of these things. I don't think I would have said that up until a couple of years ago. And interesting, Annie, you mentioned protein. I'm now, and I would say probably a medium to high plant-based protein diet, quite regularly tipping up to 100 grams of protein a day. And that's probably double what I've been used to. And I would say this has made a really big difference in my health. I feel a lot stronger, fitter, healthier, calmer, and just improved on every level. But also speaking as a man, I feel both the protein and the supplements as definite given me more strength than I would expect at my age, and I'm very happy about that. Very happy.
Thank you so much, Tim. Firstly, I just want to say it's incredibly brave to share your, experience of illness or injury. I think that we need to do that more in vegan spaces, and certainly, vegans can and do get ill and do suffer with things like chronic illness, and it's really important just to talk about that openly, and also mention how incredible a whole food plant-based diet can be, especially for managing alongside other conventional treatments such as surgery or medication if needed. But we just need to be open about that, because it really helps to to spread that awareness and just be open about the importance of supplementation. That's music to my ears as a nutritionist, because we want to have healthy vegans sustaining it in the long term. We don't just want to have people who are healthy in the here and now. We want to be able to sustain this ethical lifestyle for the rest of our lives, but also this incredible way of eating that's kindest to ourselves, to the planet, to animals. And we need to be doing that with our eyes open, listening to science. And I think that taking B12 supplementation is absolutely key, but also considering some of those other ones. None of this here on this panel is individual medical advice. And if you want to know more about plant-based diets, then definitely recommend checking out plant-based health professionals. We have so many incredible resources created by qualified health professionals. And Dr. Leyla Dehan, who introduced the panel, is actually the education lead and has got some incredible fact sheets on many different chronic illnesses as well as other conditions. So go and check those out, because that's really, if you're listening to this panel, you want to know how to sustain this lifestyle and be healthy as a vegan in the long term, then that's your go-to place. Always get evidence-based advice for all of these things. So I would love to ask, what is the one thing you wish you knew when going vegan all those years ago? And I would like to start by asking Nishma that. What is the one thing you wish you knew going vegan over 20 years ago now?
To be honest, for me, it was quite easy. Like with the food-wise, it was really easy to go vegan. I wish I knew I had more recipes at that time. That would have helped me to increase awareness, and also make the food, like, the food was tasty anyway, but it's just like helping others to make the transition to be vegan. But now we seem to have a lot of vegan recipes out there, so it's really, really easy to be vegan. And if you're looking for any traditional Indian recipes, then they are like Jain Vegans have got a website with recipes on there. But also, like what Tim said about supplementation, like, the importance of taking your B12 and vitamin D. So because although you're eating all the food, sometimes it's not easy for your body to absorb all the vitamins. So yeah, I wish I knew the importance of taking supplements.
That's just wonderful. Yes, it's been amazing to see the explosion of resources that are out there about nutrition and about other aspects of veganism. I have such a big stack of vegan recipe books, but also love that there are so many free recipes online and blogs and things like that, because Instagram has certainly been incredible for plant-based food, because who wants to look at a beige plate of meat and potatoes? You want to look at those vibrant smoothie bowls and all the colorful salads. That's the one that really draws your eye in. So I think that it's great to hear that that's been something that has changed in your lifetime as well. I know that you put out some amazing recipes out there, and I know that there's a recipe for everything now. You can find incredible plant-based versions of traditional foods, which is great. Annette, how about you? What is the one thing you wish you knew when you first went vegan or plant-based?
To be honest, the thing I wish I knew in order to allow myself to become vegan more quickly was that most people are already supplementing B12, because a lot of the animals don't have B12 naturally in their diets either, just like we don't in vegetables and so on these days. Their food often lacks it, and they are then supplemented. So I could either choose to have the supplement directly myself, or I could have taken it, as I was doing, via fish in the end, I thought. It seemed to be, but whether or not they're supplemented, I doubt it. But I didn't realize that a lot of meat is effectively supplemented via the animals. And I wish I'd known that sooner. That would have made it possible for me to move on. I thought the diet couldn't be complete in some way because I wasn't able to get B12. So that held me back a little bit.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Annette. I'm sure that rings true for so many people. And I definitely, we don't live, unfortunately, in a vegan world. The government does fortify foods with foods that are deficient in omnivorous diets. So you've got, folic acid and other things that are fortified, and flour and other products. And possibly, we had a vegan society, we would actually, or a vegan world, we would have foods fortified with B12 more widely and things like that. It's interesting that so many people don't realize that actually that this happens in areas around the world and has done for many, many years, fortification of foods exists for that exact reason. And I think just knowing all of this and planning your diet so that you get all the adequate nutrients is really important. I think I love that all of you have such a practical approach to thinking about your health as well. How about you, Annie? What is that one thing that you wish you knew all those years ago?
Well, sorry, but I'll also mention B12 because I had no idea. For 20 years, I really just did not know about B12. Other supplements as well, but B12 is a big one. I don't seem to have suffered any, but I shouldn't be saying that because I would absolutely advise everybody to take B12 if you're in the plant-based diet. It's actually a must, and I realize that fully now, but I just did not know. I was living in Africa and Asia and had no idea. But I would say also that one thing that made a huge difference in my activism is when I realized the role of diet in climate change. You know, when I started being a vegan, we did not really know about climate change. You know, a handful of scientists, or scientists knew some of them. But when maybe 20 years ago, I realized the role of diet in climate change, which frankly threatens all of life as we know it, it really boosted my activism. You know, I decided, okay, I'm going to spread that message that if we want to, you know, make the planet livable, we can do it at every meal. We can help at every meal. So I wish there had been, and I wish there was still more awareness of all those impacts, you know, now.
Thank you for sharing that. I completely agree. You know, we're talking about being healthy as vegans and sustaining this for the rest of our lives, but we need a healthy planet. That is absolutely essential for all life on Earth, and something that definitely all of us are trying to, you know, work towards, and hopefully everyone listening in today feels the same about that. Tim, how about you? What is that one thing that you wish you knew?
Well, that was an interesting question, because in 1984, when I went vegan, probably the one thing I would have liked to have known was, what does vegan mean? Because I went vegan without really knowing what vegan meant. And it's only later that I really understood what vegan meant. And for me, very much, I was what you might call a plant-based diet, health, environmental, sustainable food advocate. But I wasn't really a vegan advocate. And it's only later that I understood really that veganism really is a position we take against the commodification of all animals. And it's very much a movement for animals. It's a justice movement for animals. And it's not really to do with human health or to do with human food supply or to do with environment. It's to do with not using animals. And I didn't really understand that at the time. And it's only later that I understood that. So I think now I would say that it's really important that people are really clear. And you can be clear about a vegan position without necessarily having to be healthy or be concerned about the environment, although that's probably not the case now, or concerned about sustainable food supply. But you can also be plant-based and be concerned about your health, but not really be vegan and concerned about animals particularly, and indeed could carry on with the commodification of animals in your lifestyle choices, while still adhering to a very healthy, whole food plant-based diet. So I think the important thing is to understand these positions, these terms, not conflate them, but also then, you know, we can be concise and clear and compassionate and considerate and supportive. But I wish I'd understood what vegan meant. And I think now it's an important consideration because it's the only justice movement for animals. It's the only position we take against using animals. And that's important.
I completely agree, Tim. Thank you for raising that important point. Sometimes it's confusing when we use terms like plant-based and vegan, and when we're talking about diet, obviously veganism is so much more than it's not a diet at all. It's far greater. It's, you know, an active stand against oppression and commodification of animals. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that, and I also want to emphasize it. So as we can see in this panel, people come to this from many different angles and also find out about the other side in different ways. So, you know, that's brilliant. I definitely, first, when I went vegan, it was when I was very young. I was only about 12 or maybe 13, when my younger sister, who was 9, came home and she had refused to eat animals anymore. And then she made the connection about the dairy industry. But I really wasn't a healthy vegan, unfortunately. And I really lost my way in my early 20s. When I was studying at university and lived on chips, alcohol, I think falafel sandwiches. I can't eat falafel anymore. I've been traumatized all those years. But you know, finding my way back and realizing that for me to be able to sustain this in the long term, I do also need to be kind to myself. And that's really important. And thank you for sharing that, because I think the terms can be confusing for people, but it's important to educate ourselves about that, certainly. So last question, we have less than 10 minutes. So I want to get through everyone and ask, what is your best tip for those who want to go vegan and sustain it in the long term while being healthy as well? So obviously, you know, trying to do this in the healthiest way possible and sustain it hopefully for life. That's what we want. We want vegans for life, ideally. Could I ask Nishma, what is your tip, your best tip for those listening to this panel today and looking for advice from all of you who've had decades of years of experience of this way of living?
So first of all, you have to remember it's a journey, and every journey starts with doing your research. So I would say start doing your research, and then also learn to cook so that you can make your favorite meals. You can veganize your favorite meals. And there's so many products out there nowadays, like you have your plant yogurts, you got your tofu, you got vegan creams. You can also make creams from cashew nuts. So understand, like, you know, where you can understand your flavors that you like and how to veganize those flavors, where you can get your nutrients from, and just make your nutrients tasty. So
I love that, Nishma, because there are so many products out there now. Obviously, they're not all created equal. They all have their place in various ways, and maybe something you'd have at a birthday would be very different to something you'd have on a weeknight dinner every day. But you know, things like if you want those creamy textures, you can actually make a really iron and zinc rich dish by doing a creamy cashew based sauce and things like that, or using silken tofu to make a creamy sauce. There's so many options out there that are a little bit more nutrient dense than perhaps buying some of the products that you get there, but they also can make vegan food a lot more tasty and convenient, which is also important for many people. So thank you for sharing that tip. I think learning to cook is one of the most wonderful things that we can do to look after our health. How about Annette? What's your best tip for those who are listening in?
Based on my own experience, I think it has to be to get educated, because I wasn't. I thought I knew quite a lot. It started with some good education that set me off resolving a health issue. But then I got overwhelmed by the different things coming in the media, and I was buying into different things. They sound like they're real. They sound like they're based on studies. Many of them often are, but I didn't understand things about bias in studies and all of the things that contribute to forming opinions that people want you to have in order to fulfill their own agenda. And I think to get an education makes a world of difference, and I'm so glad I have, and I'm particularly glad that I've now, the two of us, Graham and I, we're a team, have stumbled across plant-based health professionals, because the information that comes from the Plant-Based Health Professionals UK is outstanding, and I think anybody who's serious about eating well should align themselves with a group like that. And I don't know if there's another one easily findable, but why not start there?
Oh, thank you so much. No, that we have so many different members, and if you're not a health professional, you don't need to be to join our group. We love to have you, and we love to have engaging discussions on our Facebook private group, but also we have lots of members events and educational resources and everything. So we would love to have you as a member if you are listening in. Annie, how about you? What is your best tip for those who are listening, who want to sustain this way of living in the long term?
Well, I agree with the others that, you know, research and education is really important. I mean, for instance, just see the role of diet with the current pandemic, you know, the role that meat eating has in triggering the coronavirus and similar zoonoses, you know, pandemics, but also how, you know, the people with an unhealthy diet are the ones who are the most vulnerable overall. But I think I'm going to put my emphasis on going for whole food plant-based rather than vegan food. That, you know, if we eat ultra-processed vegan food, we're not likely to be perhaps much more healthy than on an omnivorous diet. So avoiding ultra-processed food. And there's one quote I really love from Dr. David Katz, which says, taste buds are adaptable little fellows. When they can't be with the food they love to be with they love the foods they're with. You know, like there's a song that says that basically our taste buds can adapt very fast given the right incentives. So we should not fixate on alternative meats, you know, always. We can gradually move and realize there's a whole universe, as people have said, of alternatives that don't have to be just like meat. So yeah, focus on whole foods rather than you know, processed foods, basically.
Thank you, Annie, and thank you for, you know, I think it's so encouraging for people to know that your taste buds can and do change, and everyone here, I'm sure, is a testament to that. This was not the diet that everyone was raised on, and your taste buds can come alive with whole plant foods. So lastly, Tim, how about you? What's your number one tip for everyone listening who wants to do this for the rest of their lives?
Well, for the rest of your life, yeah, that's great. I mean, as Nishma said, it's a journey. So the first thing is you want to get started on your journey. So yeah, do some research, do some looking, but you've got to get started. So if you get started, then you've got to carry on. And as Annette said, yeah, you've got to start learning. So it's really good to keep educating yourself and opening yourself, and perhaps not getting too fixed an opinion about things, but keeping yourself open. And especially, of course, as you mentioned, with plant-based health professionals, you know, weekly up-to-date, latest science, latest research, including some of the less good news. You know, sometimes, I don't know, too much this is associated with an increase in that. It's important to pay attention and echo those sentiments about plant-based health professionals. I'm very grateful that Daisha Kasam got in touch to suggest that they may be able to help improve the VegFest balance of talks on health, which were good, but a little bit imbalanced. So that balance and research has been really good to good sources. And as Annie said, you know, the whole food aspect is important as you get older. You do need to look after yourself. One thing I've noticed is that I'm actually feel like I'm the same as I was 18. So I'm 59 or something this year, but I don't really feel that. I still feel like I'm 18, and I'm just wondering, am I going to feel like I'm 18 when I'm 89? In which case, I want to make sure that I try and get a body that will respond to feeling like I'm 18. But as you go through this, I think one thing is to try and keep a balance on it all. And if there is a phrase that comes to mind, it is take your issues seriously. Don't take yourself too seriously. You're probably a better advocate for veganism if you lighten up a bit. It is serious. There's a lot of serious issues there. Some of them really serious, really unpleasant. But yeah, it doesn't, you know, you've got to balance it. You've got to process this information. You've got to kind of keep buoyant and try and avoid puritanical, punitive environments where you create those kind of, you know, that kind of vibe. We want to be seeking learning outcomes, encouraging people to join us and to join our movement, and be clear about what's involved. So I'm not suggesting we sort of drop the bar, that it's okay to carry on using animals. No, we've got a clear line. You know, we want to end the use of animals here, individually, systemically, institutionally. But we've got to encourage people to do that too. So
thank you. You know, I completely agree. What a lovely positive note to end on. Stay open-minded. learn to, don't take yourself too seriously, but keep, advocating for the issues and leading by example. Be a positive example and look after your mental health. It's very important. There's a lot of focus on physical health, but mental health is really, really important. It's not been an easy couple of years for the world, no matter where you are. And I just want to send love and strength to anyone who's listening today. And hopefully you've taken away something positive from this panel of incredible people who are also healthy vegans, but just incredible people with all really unique stories. Who thank you so much for sharing them today. I'm sure that you've inspired so many people listening. So I'm going to sign off because we have another really great panel starting in about 15 minutes and give them a chance to set up. But thank you so much for joining us, and I hope everyone has a safe and restful and peaceful holidays coming up as well, and New Year. Bye everyone.
Bye bye. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.